Greetings, students. It's me again. This week, we're going to talk a little bit about the voluntary sector. So, as you have been studying and reading through, you recognize now that social services, a lot of the work that we do as social workers is provided in a couple of different venues. Government plays a huge role in terms of a lot of the services that it provides for its local communities at the county and state and sometimes city level. We also recognize that there are nonprofit agencies that are scattered throughout who sometimes work in concert with government to provide services. And then there are also corporate entities that are or for profit that provide social services, and sometimes they are also connected with government. So we're going to spend a little time today talking about the voluntary sector. And so this is a sector that we need to be familiar with because they provide an enormous amount of services for clients that we work with. So basically, the voluntary sector is this. This is just a collection of nonprofit agencies that provide services at the local level. And so chances are, if you live anywhere in a city of any real size, more than likely you will find a nonprofit organization that is in some way contributes to and delivers social services in some capacity to the surrounding community. So that's just kind of how things have largely worked out. Most of these nonprofit agencies are really dependent on philanthropic endeavors. So, in other words, foundations, individual donors. So, oftentimes, um, a couple of times a year, you will see on email drives this Give to the Max Day, Minnesota. And so it's a place where all of the nonprofit organizations kind of get together and do a big push fundraiser so that individuals like yourself and me can actually contribute to those organizations that we believe in and the work that they're supporting. Some of these entities gets government funding in addition to that. Some of them are religious based and get no other funding other than what they're able to collect. So, but again, it's usually um, collected to be redistributed or provide services back to the communities that they are. And they're all across our country. So literally everywhere you look, there's a nonprofit organization. Many of them you just kind of know routinely by name because they've been around for quite that long. Um, However, in recent years, what government has recognized is they purchase service agreements from these nonprofits. So in other words, they recognize that government bureaucracy in some instances is just too big and bulky, and so they will farm those out in the form of grants to other organizations to do some of that work. So let's talk about what a nonprofit actually is. In Minnesota, it's defined as a statute 5013C. Um, and it is pretty simple if people have a good business plan and want to look at providing services in the community to get a 501c through the state and then put together your plan and then look at what you're going to be doing in terms of providing service to the communities and then go ahead and start to raise your funds. So these nonprofit are subject to non-distribution constraints. So any revenues that they take in must be committed to the organization's purpose, not the private party. So in other words, the nonprofits are never going to turn a profit off of the work that they actually do. They need to balance out and break in at the even. There are an array of different nonprofit organizations. They're political organizations, schools, businesses, associations, churches, social clubs, consumer cooperatives or co-ops. So they exist in a number of different entities. They have to seek approval from the government. So the government has to designate you, which is why you have that 501c designation, to be tax exempt and to receive tax deductible donations. So if I were to, and I do fairly regularly, contribute to certain agencies that I believe in their mission, then I get to write those off on my taxes at the end of the year. So it's kind of a nice way to ensure that they have some income in terms of that with that tax exempt status. So some examples of these agencies are your food shelves, homeless shelters, parenting education, mental health, education, community services, food banks. So there's a number of different entities that are nonprofit agencies that provide services, sometimes under certain circumstances, sometimes in emergency, disaster relief. They're there, and these are examples of those agencies. And there are probably, at last count, more than 100,000 nationwide and they have about 200 billion in revenues, uh, representing at least 1/8 of all of the charitable donations in our country. So it's a pretty big deal, and a lot of times people are like reluctant to work for nonprofits. I've had the pleasure of working for nonprofits probably half of my career, and I really enjoyed it. You learn a lot. They're truer to the mission than most other entities that I've ever connected with. You'll learn a lot, and you can benefit there from those particular organizations as well too. Not knocking corporate or government, but nonprofits just have a different way that they approach things from my own personal perspective, which is really appreciated. All right, the United Way. Everyone has heard of the United Way. They have about 1,800 agencies local, nationwide, and they are the largest private nonprofit organization there is, and they generate revenues in around $6 billion. So, a lot of organizations that are nonprofits that are in your community actually are connected to the United Way by way of grants in terms of some of their funding sources to provide those services. They also have a pretty strict evaluation process. So they'll provide X number of dollars for you to provide service to these many people, and then you have to track how effective the services you were, account for all of the money, those kind of things in terms of how United Way has worked. Um, and that's how a lot of agencies that are nonprofit are actually funded, and they actually kind of coexist peacefully. Just some examples of some of the agencies. So some of these you'll be familiar with. Some of these are nationwide. Some of these are local, but they're all designated nonprofits, and they provide just immeasurable services to our community in terms of the services that they provide. So just wanted to stop for a moment and just kind of help you all understand a little bit about um, the nonprofit world, the voluntary sector, and how it plays a major role in the provision of social services for clients or across our country. So just one thing to think about, um, as you're considering after you're finishing school where you may want to actually be employed, I would say give a nonprofit a shot. You're not going to be rich, but that's kind of not the whole purpose to get into this field anyway. But you will learn a lot and you will make a difference in a lot of people's lives. So try that at least at some point during your career, and I think that you'll be well worth the effort. So thank you and see you soon.